Hello, my name is Aoife Deane and this is the Happy Weight podcast. So here I am at home and I've actually chosen what I think is a list. Like in Ireland, we call a list something that's like a mound of earth in a circle, kind of circle of trees. So it's like almost like a room of trees. And you don't have to be wooey at all to know that you don't mess with a list. A list is maybe where the fairies hang out. So I'm hoping anyone listening to this gets all the healing, me included, from this lovely list that I'm filming in. And the only thing I forgot to bring was fly spray. So let's see how long I can last. So I hope you had a beautiful week. And today I want to talk about the difference between permanent weight loss and short-term weight loss. I did a lot of short-term weight loss. Like I started dieting at 11 and I did a lot of eating and dieting where it was batched and the end justified the means, like cutting out food groups or following Atkins or keto or the 3-day diet or the Ann Collins diet or like so many diets. And they were all in their own way, not what the people I was like, living my life with, like non-dieters basically were obviously not following those rules. Part of me knew diets don't make sense. They don't make sense for the long term, but you always have that like, oh, the end justifies the means. Like if I could just follow this diet for long enough and like hang in there and then lose the weight and then I'd go back to normal. And of course, it never works like that because you practice what you become. So if you practice restricting, especially restriction always comes with overeating, like we're just practicing a not good relationship with food. So there is no happy ever after to that. Of course, it comes down to our overall relationship with food. But I want to cover 3 very concise ways to explain the difference between permanent and short-term weight loss. So the first one is short-term weight loss is almost like a suppression of self. You're suppressing maybe emotional needs, you're suppressing maybe social needs. Maybe if you weren't on this diet, you would be going out to dinner tomorrow night or you would be having a few drinks. Suppressing emotional needs in terms of like something might be happening where you'd usually comfort eat and you're just like suppressing that. So it's a lot of suppression. It's also suppression of, you might have like food cravings. There might be things that are popping into your head that like, oh my God, that would taste amazing now, or that would feel amazing. And it's all like suppression. So again, we're trying to put on a band-aid on pretty much every part of us, like our emotions, our food, our schedule to follow this diet. And then what happens? Because we have to go back to ourselves. So kind of like really when it's long-term weight loss, we're being authentic. Like we know we're flawed, broken humans, but we can work with that. Whereas following a diet is kind of jumping on a bandwagon of pretending we can be perfect and following some rules for a short time before then we, like bounce back in a way worse direction. And then we blame ourselves. And that's what's really sad about working with eating and weight problems. Whenever people like binge or are out of control with food, they think that's who they really are. And that's never who someone really is. That's anyone's reaction to having strict rules with a diet. Like strict rules with a diet will turn anyone crazy and make anyone out of control with food. So I've written here, short term is like to suppress, we're following. It's more about like manipulating our body, kind of manipulating food as well. So instead, I think the opposite of that, permanent weight loss, would be understanding that our overeating is a cry for help. So like, well, sometimes it can be nutritional, sometimes it can be emotional, some days it's a mix of both. Like say, for instance, on Wednesday night, we come home from work and we eat loads and we didn't do that on Tuesday night. First of all, nutritionally, there might have been stuff missing from our diet earlier on, but probably emotionally, something went on that day as well. So there's a call for healing. There's a call for help whenever we're overeating. And that's where I think we have to jump in and parent ourselves every day, like take care of our emotions and our body every day in terms of, and this is where it's a big change getting out of weight problems, right? Because our normal go-to is that if we overeat, we give out to ourselves. Whereas now if we overeat, we get to be like Petine, what's up? What's this cry for help about? How are you, what's going on with you? Like, how are you feeling? What's changed the atmosphere or the thermostat inside you? Like, what's made you feel sad or worried or anxious or stressed? Like, what's going on? So it's kind of like, rather than suppressing our emotions, suppressing what our body is asking for, we want to closely listen. And I think there's so much analogies with taking care of our body and parenting. Not that I'm a parent, but in terms of like, you could read all the parenting books in the world, and you could be like, oh, this is an excellent parenting book, and I'm definitely always going to follow page number 5 in it. But then once you've your own kiddo or niece or nephew or godchild or whoever, you realize that page number 5 in the book will not always work for that child, or that every child is different and every child has different needs and different like emotional patterns to understand, and we're the same. So you can't just put a band-aid of like, follow these rules, rather than listening to ourselves. And I think as well, with that parenting analogy, every so often people kind of, maybe like go on a health kick or something, or have loads of fruit and vegetables or something. And it's kind of almost like, if you were a child, which would you rather? Would you rather, say, having dinner with your parents most evenings, or would you rather never seeing your parents all year and then they take you to Disneyland for 2 weeks in the summer? Like, I think we would all rather see, or when we were kids, we would have rathered seeing our parents every day. So it's kind of like how we care about our body is the same. It's kind of like, rather than, the half marathon in 6 months' time, or rather than like a week of juicing, we want to be like kind of sound every day. We want to kind of like nip things in the bud. Like, it's kind of like, if we've had a lot of salty, processed, oven ready food or something, or air fryer food, it's like, yeah, no, I need freshness and aliveness in my diet today. So I'll have like a handful of grapes, rather than saying, in a week's time when I'm on annual leave, I'm going to have a juicing diet or something like that. So it's like daily care. And I think switching our whole viewpoint of our overeating as a little cry for help, a little sign something is off. Like, I know for me, the main things that were off were my inner narrative. I was super cruel to myself all the time about everything. And that's the thing, like, now that when I'm working with clients, and I talk about the inner bully, the bully that's kind of like mean to us, or like, finish the pack, or you're going to be the fattest one there, or whatever the mean thing the bully says. Like, my clients always tell me, doing this program makes me realize it's not just about food and weight. When we become aware of our inner narrative, we can realize that our inner narrative is pretty much mean about everything. So then, of course, we need to comfort eat. Of course, we've no confidence. Of course, we're not moving towards our goals, because when other people have a cheerleader in their head, we've got a bully. So of course things haven't worked out. And other themes that would have gone on is, I was not in the right job. One of my times where I was binge eating a lot, I was not suited to that job. It was really time for me to move on with quite a while, and I was suppressing that. So that didn't end well eating wise. Also, the timetable I was running, how much I was overworking, how little I was taking care of myself, that was not suited to me. And the red flag, the light on the dashboard that was showing that, was my binge eating. So your binge eating is always showing that something's up. The last time, probably in recent years, where I gained weight, I was in a relationship that I knew I had to get out of, but I was stalling on doing that. So I was drinking like a bottle of wine, like, really most nights. So that put on a bit of weight. So any overeating, any over drinking is always a little cry for help. So coming at it from a compassionate point of view, rather than a bullying point of view. And then another one is, like, our extra weight are the war wounds. Like, I kind of think every pound of excess weight we have was once an emotion that we suppressed. So like, maybe we were angry with someone, or we needed to vocalize something, and we didn't. We just opened a tub of ice cream instead. So stuff like that. Then the next one, I kind of think a kind of hidden thing, right, is, does your diet represent you, right? Because I remember when I was doing Weight Watchers sell an awful lot of like highly processed foods with long shelf lives. And that doesn't really represent my values, to be honest with you. And neither does like the protein powder industry, the protein bar industry. Again, ultra processed foods. Like, I don't know, it's just it's not really the vibe I knew suited me at all. And then I was just thinking about this as I was writing my notes. Anytime I ever did food plans, I couldn't follow them. Like, that's why I'm so happy with my work now, because I'm telling clients to do exactly what I do, which is why I'm no longer 3 stone heavier. Whereas when I was a dietitian in other jobs, using food plans and telling people to have 3 tablespoons of cottage cheese and a quarter of a cucumber, I couldn't do that stuff. Like, I couldn't do that stuff. And another thing was, it triggered my ulcerative colitis so much. So it's like, it doesn't represent your body either, because, for all the diets, they're all high and low on something. Like, there's high protein diets, or low carb diets will be low on whole grains, and then high on fat. And so for every diet regime, it's going to be high or super low on things. And maybe your body doesn't want you to be really high and really low on anything. So like, I know, like, not everyone has IBD, but people have IBS and people have bloating and all of that. So it's like, does your diet represent your values, like what you believe about even food culture? And also, does it represent, is your body giving you signals that it suits it? You know what I mean? Because I've definitely done diets, and I've worked with people who they're following food plans and it so doesn't suit their diet, or I mean their body, that they'll just take more steroids to suppress, the angry response from their body to the diet. So again, that's an extreme situation, but that is not a good sign. And then I suppose the opposite of that, right, is that it does line up with your diet, like, or I mean, your values. So like, I love, say, the Mediterranean diet. I think it's the best news on earth that, coming together and eating with others, eating in community, eating seasonally, eating locally, eating really high quality fats, having desserts, having, in the traditional diet, same in Ireland, people would have had a dessert every day. So there was no like feast and famine. There was no like, no sweet things, then a cheat day. Like, it's so gross. It's so gross on every level. So that, like, and then, when you are eating in France or Italy or Spain and the Mediterranean diet, it's like they do like fats and carbs so well. Like, they'll have, in Italy, say, they'll have, one of the courses is just pasta, say, for instance. So like, not a crazy amount of really delicious pasta. So it's like, you're sorted for carbs. It's like, you're not going to get some bananas carb sugar craving that will turn into a binge somewhere else. So it's like, it's kind of like they cross all the T's and dot all the I's with like real food within their meals. And so all of those things, I think, for me anyway, that stands more with my values: eating with others, eating with the people that I love, joining in, being included. And diets don't include you. Diets are actually very, very isolating. So then the third one, I suppose the third difference between permanent weight loss versus short-term weight loss is, in short-term weight loss, you're measuring your success based on how the scales looks every day. And long-term weight loss is, you're being really, really logical, right? So like, as in, if you, I don't know, say, starved yourself all yesterday and then binged last night, but today you weighed yourself and you're still down a pound, like, telling yourself that's a success is weird. Like, using the actual number on the scales or your clothes size as a representation of where you're going to be in 6 months' time or a year's time versus how you're interacting with food, it just doesn't really make sense, right? Because our weight is a representation of our relationship with food, say, over the last few years. So like, our body today doesn't even represent our relationship with food today. There could be some of this thigh that came from extra helpings of dessert 2 years ago, um so, or the body we're creating is coming from our relationship with food today. So can we be cool, calm and collected and staying away from the black and white? So the black and white, the all or nothing, like where you're off all bread, or you're eating a whole loaf by yourself, or, you know, you're not joining in with people eating ice creams on a sunny day, or, you know, any of the restrictive stuff. And then the backlash to that is maybe secret eating, binge eating, or whatever. So it's like, you know, and I remember this personally as well, getting over my issues. It actually takes a lot of effort. And, you know, I know when I'm coaching my clients as well, it takes a lot of effort to stay in the middle. It takes a lot of effort to wean off your tendency to go to the all or nothing, right? Because disordered eating is based on fear. Fear is the opposite of trust. So we don't trust our body. We think our body is trying to make us fat. We don't trust ourselves with food. We don't trust food. We think there's certain foods that are like going to turn us, you know, put on weight overnight or something like that. So whenever there's fear, there's control. Like, say if you were really afraid that your partner was cheating, you'd be maybe controlling them, you'd be checking everything, etc., versus what you'd be doing if you were trusting them. So part of that controlling, right, is we'd love to have the nice clean lines of a good day or a bad day. So that means that if there's a bit of a gray area where, say, maybe we've had some chips and some chocolate today, and then maybe a few hours later we've a pastry, it's like, oh, that's such an air, like a gray area. It's like, oh my God, wouldn't it be easier to just call this a bad day? You know, because so it's like we can't handle that gray area of, is it a good day or is it a bad day? But this is why it's so important to get it out of your head and into your senses, right? Because if your belly has had, say, a lovely day of food and it's absolutely comfortable, we don't need to break that cycle. We don't need to make a comfy belly uncomfy. And even if our belly is a little bit over full, it's like we don't need to react to an overfull belly by making it more uncomfortable. So staying in between, where we're not allowing ourselves do the all or nothing, where we're being brave enough to opt into everything, like, you know, go to stuff you're invited to, fully engage, you know, with your eating on holidays or whatever, but doing it in a comfortable way, like as in not listening to your head do the all or nothing now, but always making sure that you get to leave the meal, you get to leave the table feeling really well. So when we start getting glimmers of like, oh my God, I wouldn't have done that before. If I had gone to the filling station, I would have just let everyone else in the car get an ice cream and I just wouldn't have got an ice cream. You know, like I always hear those stories from my clients. Like it's such a glimmer of hope when we start eating with others, and then there's less secret eating going on behind people's backs, and where there's no good days and there's no bad days. Every day is somewhere in between, where there's yummy, healthy stuff that helps our body feel nice, and there's yummy processed stuff that makes our body feel nice. So I hope you really enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you subscribe, and I hope you give this a like, and thank you so much for being here. Have a lovely week. Mwah.